out of New York. On the left-hand side of your screen, that's a courthouse in Lower Manhattan, where the judge in that case essentially tossed out a bid from Trump's team to dismiss that case altogether. In case you're wondering what case, because it is hard to keep track, this is the hush money porn star paperwork to cover the whole thing up financial crimes case.
All right, friends, Hannah is here. So what just happened, guys? Trump allegedly threatened a federal judge in open court, saying, "If you sentence me, there will be consequences." And it backfired spectacularly. The judge didn't blink. Instead, he ordered the release of damaging Trump recordings that could destroy his defense. Trump tried to bully a federal judge and walked out worse than he came in. Trump allegedly threatened a federal judge in open court in front of witnesses, in front of the official court record, and in front of staff. Instead of the judge backing down or being intimidated or giving in to Trump's threats and pressure, the judge did the complete opposite. The judge hardened his position. The judge said, "Okay, if you are going to threaten me, if you are going to try to intimidate me, if you are going to use fear and threats to pressure me, then we are going to move forward even faster, and we are going to release damaging evidence against you."
Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news. We have obtained what is expected to be a central piece of the government's case against Donald Trump. The actual audio recording of the former president talking as if he's showing a highly classified document on U.S. war plans against Iran, with people not cleared to even know it exists, let alone what's in it. In a moment, only on CNN, you will hear what jurors will hear one day.
The judge ordered critically important recordings released immediately, recordings that contain extremely damaging conversations and extremely damaging audio, recordings that Trump desperately did not want released, recordings that contain audio of Trump discussing the actual criminal conduct he is charged with or making statements that directly contradict his public claims of innocence.
You will clearly hear the former president as he is speaking to several people. According to the special counsel's indictment, they include a writer working on Mark Meadows' memoir, the publisher, and two of Trump's staff members. The president was aware he was being recorded. This is the first time it is being played publicly.
Those recordings are now ordered to be released as official evidence in the case. Here is what is absolutely wild and shows how badly this backfired for Trump. Trump's threat itself is being documented and recorded and used as evidence against Trump in future proceedings. The court recorded Trump threatening the judge. The threat is now part of the permanent court record. The threat is evidence of obstruction of justice. The threat is evidence of intimidation of a federal judge. The threat is a new federal crime. Trump created brand new legal exposure for himself, new criminal charges, by threatening the judge. Instead of helping his case, instead of intimidating the judge into backing down, Trump's threat made absolutely everything worse for Trump.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, against you.
Well, it started right at the
like
beginning.
when Milley's talking about, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in.
That's right.
Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran.
Trump's threat triggered the release of the very damaging recordings that Trump was trying to keep secret. Trump's threat gave prosecutors new charges to bring against Trump. Trump's threat is now going to be used as evidence against Trump in current and future proceedings. This is showing a really troubling pattern that has been happening repeatedly and consistently. Trump threatens judges. Trump tries to intimidate judges. Trump tries to pressure judges into ruling the way Trump wants them to rule. And judges respond by refusing to back down and by using their judicial power to push back against Trump aggressively. Judges are completely done being intimidated by Trump. Judges are completely done tolerating Trump's threats and Trump's pressure.
Okay, thank you very much. This gag order is not only unique, it's totally unconstitutional. I'm the Republican candidate for President of the United States. I received this honor in record time. Nobody's ever gone faster. It's never happened. Nobody's ever got the numbers that we got. And I'm sitting in a courthouse.
Judges are now responding to Trump's attempts at intimidation with aggression and with the use of judicial power. Trump keeps losing every single time. Trump keeps making things worse for himself. Trump keeps creating new and serious legal problems for himself by trying to bully judges and intimidate judges into giving him favorable rulings. Here is what makes this story explosive and dangerous. Judges who have ruled against Trump have been facing actual serious threats and harassment. News outlets have documented multiple bomb threats and swatting attacks against judges after they ruled against Trump.
Good morning, George. Well, it is incredibly rare for the Chief Justice to issue a public statement, moreover, a rebuke. But that is exactly what John Roberts did as the president ramps up his attacks on the judiciary. And now Trump is responding. This morning, a rare rebuke from Chief Justice John Roberts as President Trump escalates his fight with the judiciary, calling for the impeachment of the judge who tried to block the swift deportation of hundreds of Venezuelan migrants.
Judges are receiving death threats. Judges' families are being targeted by Trump supporters. Judges are dealing with serious, legitimate security concerns because of Trump's hostile rhetoric and because of Trump's supporters' violent response to Trump's attacks on judges. So when Trump threatens a judge, that is not just tough talk or political rhetoric. That is not just Trump venting. That is Trump actively adding fuel to a fire that is already burning dangerously and threatening judges' lives. That is Trump encouraging and promoting a climate of intimidation and violence and threats against federal judges.
In a statement, Roberts saying for more than 2 centuries it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. Trump responding to the Chief Justice, saying Roberts never mentioned him by name, though it was clear Roberts was responding to the president's statement.
He didn't mention my name in the statement. I just saw it quickly. He didn't mention my name, but many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge.
Now we have a federal judge who has had absolutely enough. A federal judge who is responding directly to Trump's threat by ordering the release of damaging recordings and by documenting Trump's threat in the official permanent court record. Think about what this means strategically and what this means for Trump's legal situation. Trump tried to intimidate a federal judge to prevent the release of recordings that are extremely damaging to Trump's defense and to Trump's case. But instead of working the way Trump intended, Trump's intimidation attempt backfired completely and spectacularly. The judge released the recordings anyway in response to the threat. The judge documented Trump's threat in the official record. The judge is now using Trump's threat as evidence against Trump. Trump's attempt to silence evidence resulted directly in the release of that evidence. Trump's attempt to intimidate the judge resulted in new charges and new legal exposure for Trump. This is a complete failure for Trump. This is Trump's strategy of intimidation and bullying completely backfiring and making everything worse for Trump. Let me break down what actually happened in that courtroom hearing because there is a lot going on here. The judge was in court trying to move the case forward. The judge had had enough of Trump's endless delay tactics and endless procedural games. The judge had had enough of Trump's endless motions and endless appeals and endless procedural maneuvers designed to slow down and delay the proceedings. The judge said, "We are done. No more delays, no more appeals, no more motions, no more games. We are moving forward to sentencing. We are moving the case forward today. We are done waiting." That is when Trump apparently lost his temper. That is when Trump allegedly made a direct threat to the judge. According to the reporting and coverage of this hearing, Trump said, "If you sentence me, there will be consequences." That is not vague. That is not unclear. That is not open to interpretation. That is a direct threat. Trump is saying explicitly, if you do what I do not want you to do, if you sentence me, there will be consequences for you. That is intimidation. That is threatening a federal judge because the judge is about to rule against Trump and do something Trump does not want done. The judge's response was absolutely perfect and absolutely appropriate. The judge said, "Okay, if you are going to threaten me, if you are going to try to intimidate me into giving you a favorable ruling, then we are going to move forward even faster." The judge said, "We are releasing the recordings." And the judge ordered the immediate release of damaging recordings. Trump tried to intimidate and bully a federal judge, and it completely and absolutely backfired spectacularly. The judge responded directly to Trump's threat by releasing evidence that Trump desperately did not want released. The judge responded to Trump's intimidation with judicial power. The recordings contain audio that is extremely damaging to Trump's legal position. The recordings contain conversations where Trump might be discussing the actual criminal conduct he is charged with. The recordings might contain statements that directly contradict Trump's public claims of innocence and his public defenses. These are recordings that Trump's legal team fought hard for months to keep secret and suppress. These are recordings that Trump probably spent enormous amounts of money and effort trying to keep out of the public record and away from prosecutors. but the judge ordered them released immediately. And the judge did it in direct response to Trump's threat and Trump's attempt at intimidation. Here is what is absolutely critical and absolutely important. The threat itself is now being used as evidence against Trump. The court recorded Trump making the threat. The threat is now part of the official permanent court record. The threat is evidence of obstruction of justice under federal law. The threat is evidence of intimidation of a federal judge under federal law. The threat is a federal crime. Trump just created serious new criminal exposure for himself by threatening the judge in open court with witnesses present. Trump just gave prosecutors another federal charge to bring against Trump. Trump just handed his legal enemies another piece of strong evidence to use against him in trial and in other proceedings. The scene in the courtroom during this hearing was absolutely dramatic. According to the reporting and coverage during the hearing, Trump was screaming loudly. Trump was pointing aggressively at the judge from across the courtroom. Trump was repeatedly interrupting the proceedings and trying to prevent the hearing from moving forward normally. Trump was being so disruptive and so out of control that security personnel had to move closer to Trump in case they needed to physically intervene to restore order. The judge had to issue a warning that Trump was in contempt of court and that Trump could be physically removed from the courtroom if he continued the behavior. This was not just Trump making a quiet threat that nobody heard. This was Trump having a complete emotional meltdown in front of the judge, in front of court staff, and in front of the official court record. This was Trump screaming and threatening and being abusive in the courtroom. This was Trump trying to intimidate the judge through aggressive behavior. And the judge responded by ordering the release of damaging recordings that Trump was trying to suppress. This is not the first time Trump has threatened judges. Trump has been threatening judges repeatedly and consistently. Trump has been attacking judges publicly and in court. Trump has been calling judges corrupt and biased and unfair. Trump has been suggesting judges do not deserve respect. Trump has been trying to pressure judges into ruling the way Trump wants them to rule. Judges are done tolerating it. Judges are done accepting Trump's behavior. Judges are pushing back forcefully. Judges are using their judicial authority to respond to Trump's threats and Trump's intimidation. Judges are hardening their positions instead of backing down under pressure. Judges are ordering the release of damaging evidence in response to threats. Judges are documenting Trump's threats in the official court record so they can be used as evidence. Judges are taking Trump's intimidation seriously, and they are responding aggressively and appropriately. What makes the situation even more serious and more dangerous is that judges have been facing actual real threats and serious harassment because of cases involving Trump. Multiple news organizations have documented multiple cases where judges who ruled against Trump then faced bomb threats and swatting attacks targeting their homes and their families. Judges have had death threats made against them. Judges' families have been harassed and targeted by Trump supporters. Judges have legitimate concerns about their personal safety and about their family's safety because of the hostile environment created by Trump's attacks on judges. So when Trump threatens a judge in open court, that is not just Trump using tough language. That is not just political rhetoric or tough talk. That is Trump actively contributing to a climate of intimidation and violence and threats directed at federal judges. That is Trump adding fuel to a fire that is already burning dangerously. That is Trump potentially encouraging violence against judges. This federal judge has responded by showing Trump clearly that intimidation does not work and that threats against judges have serious consequences. Let me break this down into the key points because what is happening here is really important for understanding Trump's character, for understanding the rule of law, and for understanding what happens when someone tries to intimidate and bully federal judges. Trump's threat reveals something really important about how Trump thinks and operates. Trump threatened a judge because Trump thought it might work. Trump thought if he threatened the judge, if he suggested there would be consequences, the judge might back down or become afraid. Trump thought he could intimidate a federal judge into ruling in Trump's favor. Trump thought he could use threats and fear to manipulate the legal system and bend it to his will. That reveals that Trump believes threats work. Trump believes fear is a tool he can use to get what he wants. Trump believes that people, including judges, should be intimidated into doing what Trump wants them to do. But here is what actually happened when Trump tried this. The threat did not work. The judge did not back down or become afraid. The judge did not give in to Trump's pressure. The judge responded by releasing damaging evidence and by documenting the threat in the official record. The judge showed Trump clearly that threats do not work on federal judges. The judge showed Trump that judges have authority and will use it to enforce the rule of law. The judge showed Trump that attempting to intimidate a judge results in serious consequences. Trump's threat had the exact opposite effect from what Trump intended. Trump's threat made things much worse for Trump instead of better. Trump's threat triggered the release of evidence Trump wanted desperately to keep secret and suppressed. Trump's threat backfired completely. Trump apparently still does not understand how the legal system actually works. Trump apparently still thinks he can intimidate and threaten his way to favorable rulings. Trump apparently still thinks that judges will back down if he makes them afraid or threatens them. But federal judges understand the rule of law deeply. Federal judges understand that their job is to apply the law fairly and impartially regardless of threats or pressure or political considerations. Federal judges understand that backing down to intimidation would undermine the rule of law and judicial independence permanently. Federal judges understand their constitutional duty to maintain judicial independence. Judges are refusing to be intimidated by Trump. Judges are pushing back against Trump's attempts at manipulation. Judges are using their judicial power to respond to Trump's threats appropriately. Trump's threat to the judge is itself a serious federal crime. Threatening a federal judge is a federal offense under multiple statutes. Intimidating a judge is illegal. Obstructing justice by threatening a judge is a serious federal crime with substantial prison time. Trump just created brand new serious criminal exposure for himself by making the threat in open court. Trump just gave prosecutors another federal charge to bring against Trump. Trump just gave judges another reason to be tough on Trump and to distrust Trump in future proceedings. Trump's threat is documented permanently in the court record. Trump's threat is evidence that can be used against Trump in current and future cases. Trump's threat can be used to show that Trump was attempting to obstruct justice and intimidate a judge. The recordings that were ordered released are likely to contain additional evidence of serious criminal conduct. The recordings probably contain audio of Trump discussing the actual conduct he is charged with committing. The recordings probably contain statements that directly contradict Trump's public claims of innocence. The recordings are going to be powerful evidence used against Trump. Trump fought hard for a long time to keep those recordings secret. Trump probably spent enormous amounts of money and effort trying to suppress those recordings and keep them out of the hands of prosecutors and judges. But the judge ordered them released immediately in response to Trump's threat. Trump's attempt to silence and suppress evidence resulted directly in the release of that evidence. Federal judges are completely done being intimidated by Trump. Federal judges understand that if they back down to Trump's threats, if they give in to pressure, they are undermining the rule of law and judicial independence. Federal judges understand that judges have to maintain their authority and have to enforce respect for the courts. Federal judges understand their constitutional duty to maintain judicial independence from executive pressure. Judges are using their power appropriately to respond to Trump's intimidation. Judges are ordering the release of damaging evidence. Judges are documenting threats in the court record. Judges are increasing security around hearings. Judges are taking Trump's threats seriously, and they are responding with appropriate judicial action. Federal judges are showing Trump that intimidation does not work and that threats against judges have real consequences. Federal judges across the country are having similar experiences with Trump. Federal judges who have ruled against Trump are receiving threats. Judges' families are being targeted and harassed. Judges are dealing with serious, legitimate security concerns. Federal judges are responding by hardening their positions and by using their full judicial power to push back against Trump appropriately. Federal judges are refusing to be intimidated by Trump or by Trump's supporters. Federal judges are showing Trump that the rule of law still matters and that federal judges will enforce it regardless of threats or pressure. Federal judges are demonstrating that judicial independence is a real and powerful thing, and that judges have the power to enforce it. Trump is now dealing with federal judges who are not willing to be intimidated. Trump is dealing with the judicial system that is pushing back forcefully against Trump's attempts to manipulate it and corrupt it. Trump is facing real consequences for his threats and his intimidation and his attempted bullying of judges. The more Trump threatens judges, the more judges are going to respond by using their judicial power power against Trump. The more Trump tries to suppress evidence, the more judges are going to order that evidence released. The more Trump tries to manipulate the legal system, the more judges are going to fight back against Trump's corruption attempts. Trump is in a position where his old tactics do not work anymore. Trump's strategy of intimidation and bullying does not work on federal judges who understand the rule of law and understand their duty to maintain judicial independence. Trump's threats do not result in favorable rulings or give Trump advantages. Trump's pressure does not change judges' decisions or sway them. Trump's threats are resulting in serious consequences. Damaging recordings being released, new charges being brought, new evidence being used against Trump in proceedings. Here is what matters about Trump threatening judges and about judges responding by ordering the release of damaging recordings. Trump tried to intimidate a federal judge to prevent the release of evidence damaging to Trump's defense, but the judge responded appropriately by ordering the release of the recordings anyway, immediately. The judge documented Trump's threat in the permanent court record. The judge showed Trump that intimidation does not work and does not achieve Trump's goals. The judge used his judicial power to push back against Trump's corruption attempts. Trump created serious new criminal exposure for himself by making the threat. Trump's attempt to silence evidence resulted in the release of that evidence. Trump's attempt to intimidate the judge resulted in more damaging evidence being released and more legal consequences being brought against Trump. This is a complete failure for Trump and a complete backfire of Trump's strategy.